through. Fitzgerald, in the lead with the light, stopped short, looked around, and then gave a groan that came through his helmet speaker like a foghorn. "Oh, no. No." "What's the matter, Ivan?" Sachiko, entering behind him, asked anxiously. He stepped aside. "Look at it, Sachi. Are we going to have to do all that?" Martha crowded through behind her friend and looked around, then stood motionless, dizzy with excitement. Books. Case on case of books. Half an acre of cases, 15 feet to the ceiling. Fitzgerald and Penrose, who had pushed in behind her, were talking in rapid excitement. She only heard the sound of their voices, not their words. This must be the main stacks of the university library, the entire literature of the vanished race of Mars. In the center, down an aisle between the cases, she could see the hollow square of the librarian's desk, and stairs, and a dumbwaiter to the floor above. She realized that she was walking forward, with the others towards this. Sachiko was saying, "I'm the lightest. Let me go first." She must be talking about the spidery metal stairs. "I'd say they were safe," Penrose answered. "The trouble we've had with doors around here shows that the metal hasn't deteriorated." In the end, the Japanese girl led the way, more cat-like than ever in her caution. The stairs were quite sound, in spite of their fragile appearance, and they all followed her. The floor above was a duplicate of the room they had entered, and seemed to contain about as many books. Rather than waste time forcing the door here, they returned to the middle basement and came up by the escalator down which they had originally descended. The upper basement contained kitchens, electric stoves, some with pots and pans still on them, and a big room that must have been, originally, the students' dining room, though when last used it had been a workshop. As they expected, the library reading room was on the street-level floor, directly above the stacks. It seemed to have been converted into a sort of common living area for the building's last occupants. An adjoining auditorium had been made into a chemical works. There were vats and distillation apparatus, and a metal fractionating tower that extended through a hole knocked in the ceiling 70 feet above. A good deal of plastic furniture of the sort they had been finding everywhere in the city was stacked about, some of it broken up, apparently for reprocessing. The other rooms on the street floor seemed also to have been devoted to manufacturing and repair work. A considerable industry, along a number of lines, must have been carried on here for a long time after the university had ceased to function as such. On the second floor they found a museum. Many of the exhibits remained, tantalizingly half visible in grimed glass cases. There had been administrative offices there, too. The doors of most of them were closed, and they did not waste time trying to force them, for those that were open had been turned into living quarters. They made notes and rough floor plans to guide them in future more thorough examination. It was almost noon before they had worked their way back to the 7th floor. Selim von Olmhorst was in a room on the north side of the building, sketching the position of things before examining them and collecting them for removal. He had the floor checkerboarded with a grid of chalked lines, each numbered. "We have everything on this floor photographed," he said. "I have 3 gangs, all the floodlights I have, sketching and making measurements. At the rate we're going, with time out for lunch, we'll be finished by the middle of the afternoon." "You've been working fast." "Evidently you aren't being high church about a qualified archaeologist entering rooms first," Penrose commented. "Ah, childishness," the old man exclaimed impatiently. "These officers of yours aren't fools. All of them have been to intelligence school and criminal investigation school. Some of the most careful amateur archaeologists I ever knew were retired soldiers or policemen. But there isn't much work to be done. Most of the rooms are either empty or like this one, a few bits of furniture and broken trash and scraps of paper. Did you find anything down on the lower floors?" "Well, yes," Penrose said, a hint of mirth in his voice. "What would you say, Martha?" She started to tell Selim. The others, unable to restrain their excitement, broke in with interruptions. Von Olmhorst was staring in incredulous amazement. "But this floor was looted almost clean, and the buildings we've entered before were all looted from the street level up," he said at length. "The people who looted this one lived here," Penrose replied. "They had electric power to the last. We found refrigerators full of food, and stoves with the dinner still on them. They must have used the elevators to haul things down from the upper floor. The whole first floor was converted into workshops and laboratories. I think that this place must have been something like a monastery in the Dark Ages in Europe, or what such a monastery would have looked like if the Dark Ages had followed the fall of a highly developed scientific civilization. For one thing, we found a lot of machine guns and light autocannon on the street level, and all the doors were barricaded. The people here were trying to keep a civilization running after the rest of the planet had gone back to barbarism. I suppose they'd have to fight off raids by the barbarians now and then." "You're not going to insist on making this building into expedition quarters, I hope, Colonel?" Von Olmhorst asked anxiously. "Oh, no. This place is an archaeological treasure house. More than that, from what I saw, our technicians can learn a lot here. But you'd better get this floor cleaned up as soon as you can, though. I'll have the subsurface part, from the 6th floor down, air-sealed. Then we'll put in oxygen generators and power units and get a couple of the elevators into service. For the floors above, we can use temporary air sealing floor by floor, and portable equipment. When we have things atmosphered and lighted and heated, you and Martha and Tony Latimer can go work systematically, and in comfort, and I'll give you all the help I can spare from the other work. This is one of the biggest things we've found yet." Tony Latimer and his companions came down to the 7th floor a little later. "I don't get this at all," he began as soon as he joined them. "This building wasn't stripped the way the others were. Always, the procedure seems to have been to strip from the bottom up. But they seem to have stripped the top floors first here. All but the very top. I found out what that conical thing is, by the way. It's a wind rotor, and under it there's an electric generator. This building generated its own power." "What sort of condition are the generators in?" Penrose asked. "Well, everything's full of dust that blew in under the rotor, of course, but it looks to be in pretty good shape. Hey, I'll bet that's it. They had power, so they used the elevator to haul stuff down. That's just what they did. Some of the floors above here don't seem to have been touched, though." He paused momentarily. Back of his oxy mask, he seemed to be grinning. "I don't know that I ought to mention this in front of Martha, but 2 floors above, we hit a room. It must have been the reference library for one of the departments. They had close to 500 books in it." The noise that interrupted him, like the squawking of a Brobdingnagian parrot, was only Ivan Fitzgerald laughing through his helmet speaker. End of Part 2.